I have a pretty crazy story to share, and it starts with something I know happened even though I don't remember any of it myself. The first part is fact, and the reason I know this is because my parents have told me the story many times throughout my life. When I was 4 years old, my family was staying at some cabin resort in Tennessee. On one of the evenings, we were all outside and somehow I wandered off by myself. My mom tells me that she had only walked away from me for a matter of seconds before realizing I was gone. At first they thought I couldn't have gotten far, but when no one could find me, it quickly turned into a serious situation. I guess this was a big deal where people staying in other cabins joined the search, and the resort had their staff spread out across the property. According to my parents, there were people everywhere looking for me, and I was missing for over an hour. Eventually, this older man named Gene found me. He was staying with his wife in the last cabin on the edge of the resort, and they had seen me walking alone in the trees slightly off the property. My mom has always called Gene an angel, and she said it was the most terrifying experience of her life. My dad says she was hysterically running through the campground, convinced someone had kidnapped me. For my parents, it was a nightmare trip, but it thankfully ended with me being found safe. What I didn't learn until I was in my 30s was that there was a whole other part to this story. While we were having a barbecue with extended family, my mom brought up the cabin incident, and I hadn't heard her talk about it in a while. She went over all the parts I remembered, but then continued past that and into something totally new. In this second part of the story, she said that about 6 months afterward, my grandma had given me a handmade teddy bear for Christmas. I named this bear Pooh because it reminded me of Winnie the Pooh, and it became something that never left my hands. I would bring him everywhere and lose my mind if I couldn't find him or left him somewhere. I need to point out that I have zero memory of this. Before hearing this story, I didn't even know the bear existed. My mom went on to say that about a month after Christmas, she and my dad saw me doing strange things with Pooh in my room. I would have the bear on its back on the small table next to my bed and pretend to work on it like a surgeon working on a patient. I guess I would talk while I was doing this and said things like, "This won't hurt you and you'll be back home soon." They definitely thought it was odd behavior, but assumed it was something I had picked up from TV. The problem was it didn't stop. It finally came to a head when my dad walked into my room and caught me in the middle of another one of these sessions with the bear, but that time I was using some kind of wild-looking tool I had made. My mom said that I had taken a fork from the kitchen and used Scotch tape to carefully attach a keychain flashlight and a bunch of mechanical pencil leads to the end of it. Then my dad saw me spinning it above the bear like I was going to probe into its head. That was when he had had enough and he stopped me. After that, they sat me down to talk about why I was doing it, and my mom says she felt so bad because I was visibly upset and kept my head down the whole time. When they finally got me to answer, my response gave my mom chills. She said I told them it was because that's what they did to me at the cabin. Both of my parents were shocked and disturbed by that answer, and they didn't know how or why I would have come up with something like that. They tried to get me to explain what I meant, but I completely shut down afterward and I never added anything else. They stopped the interrogation when I started to get teary, and that's really where it all ended. My dad ended up taking the bear away, which my mom says was pretty painful for about a week, but not long after that I stopped asking for it. When the bear was gone, my behavior went back to normal. Since I was too young to remember getting lost in the woods or the teddy bear, these things had no impact on my life. I had known the cabin story forever, but I didn't think it was anything more than a 4-year-old wandering off. After learning about the bear, though, I had a completely different view of what happened to me. Whatever I was doing with Pooh had to be connected to my time lost in the woods because I pretty much said so out loud to my parents. My mom is convinced this is true because she can't think of any other reason I'd be doing these strange procedures on a stuffed bear and saying that they had been done to me at the cabin, especially not at such a young age. Both of those things also happened in the span of 1 year, and that's a little suspicious. I understand there could be other explanations, and that's fine. I just have a gut feeling that more happened to me when we were out at the cabin. I think I may have been acting out an experience that I could only express in that limited way. It's so crazy when I think about this happening to me because I don't remember any of it. I only know what my parents have told me. Sometimes I wish I knew what went on during that hour I spent alone in the woods, but other times it scares me and I think I already know too much. On Halloween night in 2016, I had an epiphany and remembered something about my mom from when I was very young, and it completely changed the way I look at her. This was a major traumatic event I had completely forgotten about, but it came back so clearly it felt like I was reliving what happened instead of remembering it. I had been at my parents' house for Halloween that year because other plans had fallen through. I was supposed to be at a party, but it was canceled at the last minute when the guy whose house it was at got sick. Since I had nothing else going on, I ended up helping my mom hand out candy. They live in a pretty upscale neighborhood where everyone decorates, and they've always gotten a lot of trick-or-treaters. When I got to their house, my dad was in the kitchen cooking something for Monday Night Football, and my mom was putting her costume on upstairs. Since I didn't have anything to wear, I decided to put on an old witch's hat my mom still had from when I was in high school and went up to find it. Before I go on, there's something important I need to say about my mom. For as long as I can remember, she is dressed up as an alien for Halloween. It didn't matter what year it was or which costume she owned at the time. It was always some kind of alien, and I can't remember a single Halloween where she did anything else. When I got into my parents' room, my mom was in their bathroom getting ready, so I walked in to ask her where the hat was. She was sitting on a tall stool in front of the mirror and had just pulled her hair back to put her mask on. In one hand, she was holding her ponytail, and in the other, she was holding up a brand new alien mask beside her face while looking at herself. I had never seen this mask before, and it was a pretty lifelike gray alien face with full eye covers. I don't know why, but I was overwhelmed when I saw this and got an intense feeling that I'd seen it before. It was a huge moment of déjà vu, but in a scary way. It was such a weird feeling that I didn't even say anything to her. I just turned around and went back downstairs, totally forgetting about the hat. I sat in the living room with the weirdest feeling in my stomach. I couldn't stop picturing my mom staring at herself in the bathroom mirror with this mask next to her face. And as I thought about why I was feeling that way, I realized it wasn't déjà vu. I was remembering something that had really happened. I was only 7 or 8 years old, but things came back to me quickly after that. I remembered getting up in the middle of the night because I was thirsty. When I was a kid, we had a stack of Dixie cups on the bathroom counter so I could get water, and our bathroom was across the hall from my bedroom. As I was walking across the hall, I thought I heard my mom in the kitchen and must have wandered out there. Then I saw her sitting on one of our tall chairs at our bar-style counter. This was really scary to me because she was sitting by herself, motionless, and she didn't look at me. None of the lights were on and she wasn't doing anything. She was just turned away from the kitchen and staring into the living room and didn't even respond when I said, "Mom." Then came the clearest and most horrific part of this. I walked over to her and got within a foot of her knees. When I looked up at her face, she was still staring off into the living room and not looking at me. But then there was something else behind her that I hadn't noticed before, and I saw it moving. The only way I can say this is that something leaned out from around the side of my mom and looked right at me, and it looked exactly like her Halloween mask. I started screaming and grabbing her legs, but she still didn't look down at me and had no emotion. That was where my memory of it ended. That's the long version of it too. It's all in one very quick block in my head, but I don't know what happened after that. This probably isn't the best way to word it, but one of the weirdest parts is that I remembered remembering it. In other words, I used to know it happened, and I was afraid of her for a period of time after that. I was also too scared to get water or use the bathroom for a while too. As I got older, my memory of it must have faded because it was completely gone by the time I was a teenager, and it didn't come back until I saw my mom holding the mask beside her face in the bathroom. It really ruined that Halloween for me because I couldn't get it out of my head. It was like 2 separate nightmares in one. The alien-looking creature that leaned out of the dark from behind my mom was terrifying enough. Then seeing her mindlessly sitting there and staring was like a whole second layer of scary. I told my mom that I had this memory of her, and she thought it was ridiculous. She said the same thing other people have said to me, that I had a bad dream when I was a kid and that's all it was. My story has been dismissed by almost everyone I've told. It doesn't even bother me that much that no one understands because I know I saw this happen. I did ask my mom why she chose to go as an alien every Halloween though, and she acted like it was a random decision. She said she got an alien costume one year and just kept going with that theme. I don't believe that for a second because she's never had an interest in anything like that, yet every Halloween, as far back as I can remember, she was some form of alien. And for some reason, her masks got progressively more real, especially in 2016. That one was extremely lifelike. It never seemed weird to me before, but now it does, like she had made the choice subconsciously. I have accepted that I'll never know exactly what I saw because it was a long time ago and I was so young at the time, but at least I know I won't ever lose the memory of it again. The image I have of that thing coming out from behind my mom is set in stone this time. I live in the Castilla y León region in northern Spain. I'm 30 years old now, but when I was 14, my dad took me along for a work trip where we left at night and drove from León to Palencia. I don't remember what time it was, but I know it was late and I was listening to music with headphones on. I traveled with my dad often, and this is something I would do to help me fall asleep in the car. The road was mostly empty that night, but there was one car behind us, and I remember this because I kept seeing their headlights in the side mirror. I was just watching things go by on the edge of falling asleep when my dad aggressively slowed the car down, and it startled me into being fully awake because it pushed me against the seatbelt. On the road ahead of us was a huge bright light that I thought was a truck. It was so bright that I could barely look at it, like some kind of spotlight in the middle of the road. Before we came to a complete stop, my dad reached over and started using the emergency handbrake to slow us down, and I could see that the dash lights and the radio had shut off. He finally got the car to stop, and I have a clear memory of hearing the back tires screeching at the end, so I know he was pulling hard on the brake. The first thing I noticed was that nothing in the car was working. The dashboard was dark and the engine wasn't running. This bright light was still about 100 meters ahead of us, and even though it was too bright to look at directly, I put my hand in front of my face and I could tell it was moving. It looked like it was going from one side of the road to the other in a circle pattern, but I'm not sure. It definitely wasn't sitting still. My dad kept turning the key and pumping the gas pedal, but the car wouldn't start, and I wasn't even hearing the starter turning. Nothing was working, like it was completely dead. After doing this several times in a row, he opened his door and got out of the car. When he did that, this rush of hot air came inside, and as weird as this sounds, it absolutely reeked like asphalt. It was overwhelming and horribly strong, and it smelled exactly like when a construction crew is laying a new road. It literally took my breath away. My dad shut his door after that, but he stayed outside. Then he started walking down the middle of the road toward the light. One of the main things I remember about this was watching his silhouette walking away from the car, then looking behind us and seeing that other car still there but also stopped, and their headlights were off as well. In those few seconds I was looking out the back window, there was a massive flash of light. Since I had been turned all the way around, I actually saw the landscape and the road light up like daytime, and it seemed to go as far as 1 kilometer around us. There was a man and a woman in the car behind us too, and I saw both of their faces light up from this flash because of how bright it was. After that happened, it went totally dark. When I turned back around to look in front of us, whatever had been in the road was gone, and my dad was still standing out there by himself. When my eyes finally adjusted, I could see the road again, and there was nothing there. No truck or crew of workers with a giant light. It was just empty, dark road. Then I sat in the seat waiting for my dad to come back so he could tell me what was going on, but he just stood out there with his arms at his sides. I could only see the back of him, and I'm not sure how long I waited, but I finally opened my door and shouted at him. The second I yelled "Dad," he turned around like I had surprised him. Then he just casually walked back to the car. When he opened the door to get in, I got a heavy second blast of that same air from outside, and it still had the hot asphalt smell. Then he got into the seat and shut the door, and things got even more strange. As soon as he sat down, I asked what happened and what was in the road, and without any hesitation, he gave me the dumbest answer I could have imagined. He sat there and told me it was road construction. I even challenged this while we were literally sitting there with nothing around us. There was no crew or machinery or trucks, but he wouldn't change his answer and he was being extremely distant. This was actually intensely scary to me because I was young and it wasn't at all like him. He's usually a very serious person, but what he was saying sounded like a joke. He acted as if a construction project was happening right in front of us. After that, he went back to turning the key again, and within a few tries, the car started. Everything on the dashboard lit up and he started driving like nothing had even happened. As we drove away, I remember looking down at the road and all around my side of the car, and I didn't see a single sign that anything had been there. The only thing I noticed was the asphalt smell, but even that went away after a minute or two. I also want to mention that we left the scene before the car behind us did, and I don't remember seeing their headlights turn on. I believe they did eventually get going though, because I'm pretty sure they caught up to us about 10 minutes later, then passed our car, and I think it was the same couple. While we had been stopped, I never saw any other cars driving in the oncoming lane either. I don't find that to be too unusual since it was so late, and the entire event had been less than 5 minutes long. I have never gotten a real answer from my dad and basically stopped talking to him about it shortly after it happened. My mom heard the whole story from me, but she doesn't know what to think because she talked to my dad and he told her the same thing he told me. We ran into some road construction. I will never understand why he continues to say that since there wasn't a soul on the road other than us and the people behind us. That makes it obvious to me that something happened to him, and maybe it was because he got out of the car. It's like he has some kind of amnesia about what we saw, and it's still what he thinks now. The last part of this came in the form of two very strange physical symptoms. For about 3 months after that trip, I was getting headaches every other day and I completely stopped dreaming. The headaches seemed to come and go without any reason or trigger, and I don't remember having even one dream during that time. That might not sound like evidence of anything, but I've always been a pretty vivid dreamer, especially at that age, and it was noticeable when they weren't there. I don't know if my dad got any of the same symptoms, so it could have just been me. I really wish I could talk to him about it, but he truly believes nothing happened. It's like we experienced two totally different things, and I've never been able to explain why.